I'm Ethan, I love muzzleloading, and this is the 2023 Gunmakers Fair at Kempton in Kempton, Pennsylvania. I think it was another great year for the Gunmakers Fair at Kempton here. They had record turnout on Friday, and I think great attendance on Saturday and Sunday. I have not heard any specific numbers, but I think the turnout through the weekend was great. It's really impressive, I think, that the turnout was as good as it was, especially on that Friday, because we have heat indexes up into the upper 90s and the early hundreds, or the low hundreds, I should say. It was just a humid, sticky mess, but we had long rifle and muzzleloading enthusiasts from all across the eastern United States come into the Gunmakers Fair at Kempton to really, I think, help make it a really great show. The event had an increased number of vendors and artisans. The midway had been expanded to make some more space. The living history area accommodated more and more tents than last year, which is just fantastic to see for the second year of this show. It can be a little nerve-wracking for a new show to come in here through your first year, you're really new, it's exciting, but to have a good turnout, as good as they did here for their second year, I think is really great. And I think it shows a positive future for the Gunmakers Fair at Kempton. Now I want to say I did not get a lot of footage of the vendor tables and the artistic work at the show. If you'd like to see some up-close photos and videos from that, I encourage you to check out the Duelist 1954 channel. But this year at the Gunmakers Fair at Kempton, I focused on volunteering my time to film and record each of the educational seminars that were going on at the show. One of the biggest points of feedback I saw coming out of the videos coming from last year's event was a desire to see the educational seminars featured. So I contacted the event organizers and really the committees that are behind the Gunmakers Fair at Kempton and offered my services as a volunteer to film and document each of the seminars that happened in the seminar pavilion. Not getting paid, not getting compensated to do this. I'm doing this really just to help preserve the education and knowledge and really do what I can to help out and preserve more of this muzzleloading history. So with those seminars filmed and recorded now, we're launching a Gunmakers Fair at Kempton YouTube channel where you can find and view all of these seminars. You can learn from these masters of long rifle and muzzleloading culture from the comfort of your own home if you can't make it out to this event. So even right now, close this video, search for the Gunmakers Fair at Kempton YouTube channel, or go to the Gunmakers Fair at Kempton website and check out some of the videos that we already have posted by the time that you're watching this video. Preserving this kind of information, this kind of education is really at the heart of what I like to do here at I Love Muzzleloading. I tell people all the time, if I could be behind the camera preserving muzzleloading history like we were able to here at the Gunmakers Fair at Kempton, I would never be in front of the camera again. It's really where I like to be. I like to do this, and I was really excited when the staff at the Gunmakers Fair at Kempton were so on board with me coming in to do this. So check out the Gunmakers Fair at Kempton channel. Check out some of these seminars. Really, for the rest of this video, I'm going to be showing you a few clips, some short excerpts from each of the seminars to show you the kind of topics and the things that are being covered in these videos. The full seminars are going to be on the Gunmakers Fair at Kempton YouTube channel, and that is controlled by the Gunmakers Fair at Kempton staff and the event organizers. I'm participating as a videographer and editor, as a volunteer here. Everything that could ever possibly be made from any ad revenue or any promotion of these seminars is going to go directly back into the Gunmakers Fair at Kempton here to help preserve the muzzleloading culture and history that this event is preserving and further promote the event so it can stick around so that future generations can enjoy this event.
I'd like to welcome you all to my gun finishing talk. I always preface this talk with the statement that this is how I finish guns. I'm pretty adamant about how I do it, so it kind of sounds like I'm criticizing other methods, and I'm really not, but you know, I'm pretty set in my ways. So the methods that I use are what works for me, and I've been teaching this class now, I think, for close to 10 years, and the people that have taken the class have come back to me with positive results, so I think that my methods are pretty good. I will also admit that I am a bit of a mad scientist. I have a bit of a mad scientist approach when I'm doing this, and if you purchased a gun from me 10 years ago and brought me the gun and said, how did you finish this? I can tell you the steps that I probably use because I don't vary the steps, but I probably can't tell you exactly what I did. And that's because I'm constantly changing what I'm doing, finding better methods. And I like experimenting. I have a big cabinet at home, and in that cabinet, I'll go through today, you know, I have all kinds of different mixtures and things like that that I use when finishing guns. And, you know, some of them I've pushed off to the side and I don't use anymore, and I generally don't mention those in the talks. And then I do some new things, which I will mention. My primary stain that I use both on maple, curly maple, and I even use it on walnut, is what we refer to as nitrate of iron stain. A lot of times you'll hear it referred to as aquafortis. And aquafortis is actually the acid that's used in making the stain, but aquafortis is the period term for nitric acid. So when we see aquafortis in period research, we're not really sure whether they're talking about the stain or the acid. A number of years ago, William Young, who...
Yeah, it's a very rich history, and the history around the brown bess, you know, the things that are all in context with it, really is a rich history. It's a bit, and what I love about it so much is such a human history. It's a wonderful human history. My name's Dave Person, and I do quite a bit of demos and seminars here at the Gunmakers Fair. I've done this for years. I'm closely associated with the American Long Rifle site, the ALR site. And on ALR, I'm known as Smart Dog, and I'm known by my name on the Muzzleloading forum. This is a talk I wanted to do for a long, long time. I tend to focus on British work. I love British work, but I love more than just British work. I love the British gun trade, particularly in the 18th century. It's a rich history, it's a fascinating history, and I really have fun digging into some of the details, getting into the weeds with not just what was made, but why they were made, how they were made, and what they were made for. And it really is a worthwhile endeavor to do some research into brown bess and the King's musket. I am very much involved in making brown besses and other military arms from the 18th century, primarily for reenactors, but also for museums and also for private individuals who just want to have a copy of something. I have been studying this stuff for quite a number of years, and I found two things that have really surprised me. One, not so surprising, there's a great deal of mythology about the British gun trade, but also particularly the King's musket, the brown bess. But there's also a great deal of...
Basically, my focus on the seminar today, I've been working on guns over 30 years, starting about 1985, 86. And I've had the opportunity through the years to do a lot of restoration. And so having that, you get afforded the opportunity to be able to take a lot of guns. You get the opportunity to take a lot of these old antique guns apart, and you also find out why they have issues, whether they're cracks, breaks, sometimes it's structural issues that are internal that was created during the process of construction. So the focus for this seminar is actually to try to relay some things that we see that are fairly common. I've seen through the years where people will take an order for a gun and they think that for some reason, because the guy's not going to shoot the gun very much, maybe he just wants it as a decorative item, they don't actually take the time to build it for the bad weather, they don't build it for horses, they don't build it for hard usage or lots of rain or snow. And you'll cut corners on it because you know the guy that's outcome that ordered it is probably not going to use it very hard. But what you see is sometimes the guns get turned down to family members to the next generation and they do want to use it. Or they go up for auction, they come up out here on the market again, and they get used by people that really go out and want to camp in the weather, they want to hunt in the snow, and the rifles don't hold up for the long term. So my thing is, if you're going to build a rifle, it doesn't take much longer to do it right as it does to do it halfway. So why don't you just do it right the first time?
The first part of this talk is going to be more about looking at originals. So, there's a handful of originals inside. I brought down an original brown bess. It doesn't have the artistry of a lot of the pieces that we like to study, but it's what I can grab a hold of so I can hold up. There's a killer display of Jacobsburg rifles. 8 or 9 or 10 of them up there. And when I'm done talking about dimensioning and what to study, looking at photographs and whatnot, go up there, ask politely, and take some photos, and try to note little differences between all of these guns produced by one maker, because that comes back to kind of one of the closing points I want to make, which is that through all this, while I designed, this is a JP Beck rifle blended off of several originals. When I say it's blended off of several originals, no two are the same. there's lots of them out there. There's over 50 Schroyers that are out there by different hands within the shop, most likely, but everyone's a little different. So when I'm talking about a 1/16 of an inch here, an 1/8 of an inch there, even a 1/4 inch somewhere, what ultimately matters is that it looks pleasing to your eye and that it fits you. Because you lay several next to each other, they're all really different. The second part of this talk will be about taking your dimensions, your photographs, your tracing, if you've been lucky enough to take a tracing from an original, and putting it onto a piece of paper so that you can then lay that onto your expensive piece of maple, walnut, cherry, and not drill a hole in the wrong place.
I'm going to talk along with BJ Habermel, and my name is Dave Person. Some of you, if you're on the ALR website, I'm on there as Smart Dog. BJ, you were there on BJ, right? Yeah. And our task today is to talk about the sequence of what you do to build any kind of muzzle-loading gun. We're not talking about the actual methods of doing each of these steps. That's not the point. The point is, what's the sequence? BJ and I had this conversation maybe way back in like 5 years ago or more.
Please.
About noticing folks sometimes get confused. When do I put my barrel lugs in? When do I drill my barrel lugs? When do I put the butt plate on? When do we put the trigger in place? And we figured out, looking at some of the questions that come in on the ALR site and the muzzleloading forum, it looked like there were a lot of people who were confused or were unsure of how to proceed in making most muzzleloading guns. And so we decided, this presentation would be on the sequencing of what you do, or at least in this case, the sequencing of what we do. In my case, my Braintree Hill gun shop, which is myself and my apprentice, Maria Gray, and BJ, who also works he's worked for Lepley.
No, I was working with Fred Miller.
Fred Miller,
years
sorry,
ago.
Fred Miller, yeah.
Hello, Fred.
We both have quite a bit of experience, and these are kind of the sequences of things that work for us. And one of the things that I'll emphasize is that the sequence of events that you proceed with when you're building a gun can have a major effect on the quality of your work. Because one, it makes it more efficient. Two, it makes it in such a way that you don't have to go back and redo stuff. And this is really kind of important, because if you want to do crisp, clean work, oftentimes that's accomplished not just by the individual procedures and methods in cutting and sanding and scraping the wood, but also when you do it and what comes after. These are important key points in gun building. Now I'm going to emphasize building a gun from a plank of wood, all right? BJ is going to talk about some of the differences you might think about when you are now dealing with a pre-carved stock, because he's had a lot of experience building from pre-carved stocks. There are some differences. The procedures are a little different because the pre-carved's got a lot more work done for you.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Mark Thomas. I'm here to talk about carving and engraving. A number of years ago, I heard a couple guys talking, I think it was Dixon's some years ago, and how they could carve, but they didn't know how to engrave. And I always found that a little bit odd, because really, carving and engraving are using basically the same tool forms. A flat, a square, and a round. In engraving, we also have a tool, it's called an onglet, and lozenge, and those kind of things, but the forms really are basically the same. So what I try to do now is try to get people to believe that get away from the mystery, get away from the fear, and learn how to sharpen your tools. That's really the key to doing each one of those techniques. But the biggest key is learning how to draw. Now, I was never taught how to draw. I've never had an art class except 9th grade. Of course, back then we played with clay and all the fun stuff that didn't really mean anything, but I got a grade. I think I passed the class. Now I wish I had. So the past couple of years, I've been doodling. Now, anybody that's on Facebook may see a man by the name of Ken Hunt. Now, I kind of mimicked what he's doing with his drawings with this arabesque sketch. It's a doodle. I'm not looking for perfection in what I'm drawing here as much as looking at the form. So I took this particular form, copied it, sent a picture off to a friend of mine that's wanting to study and learn how to engrave. And he's doing it on his own, and he's talking to everybody that he knows that does this stuff. So when I sent him that picture, I said, look at it, find the problems. Not that I'm going to show you problems, but I want you to look at the design and see what you see in the positive space, in the negative space, so you can understand that scroll. And I suggest that to everybody when you're looking at drawing a scroll. That's the basis for what we do, whether you're working in jewelry, whether you're working in guns. It really doesn't matter if you're getting away from straight lines and geometric shapes. You've got to have a bent line. And to start doing any engraving, you first have to know how to make a straight line. Well, a friend of mine asked me about a month ago, he's having trouble with a straight line. I said, well, that's the easiest thing to correct. And he looked at me kind of funny, and I said, what are you using? He said, well, square graver. I said, well, that's easy. Extend the heel. He said, what? If you make a real short heel on your tool, it doesn't track in your cut. When you extend that heel long, now it's tracking in the cut you've already made. So the tool doesn't want to wander off that track. He goes, this whole thing so simply explained, it's written in books everywhere, but we miss it. We're so concentrated on looking at making something work that we're forgetting the basics of it. And this is just basic physics. So what I suggest, if you're going to do straight lines and don't want to monkey with relief angles and all that sort, then make a long heel tool just for straight lines and one real short for scrolls. Now the short.
I can't say enough about my excitement for the Gunmakers Fair at Kempton. Even being back home now, I'm excited for next year. I'm excited about the possibility of improving our recording for next year. So I want to put the call out now to start thinking about it. But if you're somebody who has a passion for preserving this kind of history, this kind of culture and education, and you're at the event and you're handy with a video camera, please reach out and let me know. I would love to organize a little army of volunteers for this event, and then future other events maybe here. We'll have to see just based on volunteer help here. But I would love to be able to cover all of the educational opportunities that happen at the Gunmakers Fair at Kempton. We have some of the demonstrations and we have the seminars, but there were so many other educational venues and other educational classes happening at the Gunmakers Fair at Kempton. It was impossible for me to cover them all. So if you're interested in that kind of thing and you're planning on being at the event next year, next July in 2024, please reach out to me. I'd like to get this conversation started. I'd like to get this ball rolling so we can preserve more and more of this stuff each year so that it can't get lost and it helps keep the event going into the future. And it also is promoting the artists that are out there. So I really want to take a step here and say thank you to each and every one of the presenters. Everybody was comfortable with me coming in and filming them. So really can't thank all of you enough for taking that step, maybe a little bit out of your comfort zone and getting in front of the camera here so that we can preserve your knowledge for future generations. That's all I've got for you. I'd like to thank you so much for watching. I'm Ethan. I love muzzleloading. If you'd like to learn more about this or anything else related to muzzleloading, visit the Gunmakers Fair at Kempton YouTube channel and then visit ilovemuzzleloading.com. Thank you so much for watching. We'll catch you next time.